Welcome to Madrid, the vibrant heart of Spain. Kings once lived here, artists created here, and today almost 7 million people call this city home. It's a place of grand squares, theaters, and endless walks, perfect to discover step by step. Today we invite you to join us for our third walking tour. We'll take you along the iconic Gran Via all the way to the famous Plaza de España. On the map, the route looks short, but along the way there are so many stories, details and surprises that it will take you a good few hours to reach the end. That's Madrid, colorful, layered, intense, especially in summer. Madrid fascinates, inspires, and delights. Let us guide you along another of our favorite routes and get to know this remarkable city with us, one step at a time. If you enjoy urban walks like this, hit subscribe and join us for more strolls around the city. Up next, Madrid strolls, Gran Via and Plaza de España. Let's get started. We begin at Puerta del Sol, the place where Madrid's heartbeat is the strongest and where Spain's Kilómetro Cero is marked. Today we'll head out along the charming Calle Arenal, passing the home of Spain's most famous little mouse, Ratoncito Pérez, the local equivalent of the Tooth Fairy, whom we talked about on our first walk. Turning right, we arrived at the Monasterio de las Descalzas Reales, a cloistered convent of Poor Clare nuns. In our view, it's the most fascinating 16th century convent in Madrid. It was founded in 1559 by Joanna of Austria, sister of King Philip II and mother of King Sebastian of Portugal. Joanna of Austria was an exceptional woman. She ruled Spain twice as regent. First, when Philip II traveled to England to marry Mary Tudor, and again during one of his later absences. She was also a passionate supporter of the Jesuits. Tradition says she was secretly admitted into the Society of Jesus under the male pseudonym Mateo Sanchez, the only case of its kind in the order's history. She maintained lively correspondence with Ignatius of Loyola and Francis Borgia, and gave real practical support to their work. The convent was created within a former palace, one of the very first in Madrid. Legend has it that in 1339 the first Madrid Cortes, an assembly of representatives of the royal council, nobility and clergy, met right here. Descalzas became a refuge for women from royal and aristocratic families. Novices from noble houses brought dowries with them, and generous royal donations soon turned the convent into one of the richest in Europe, filled with priceless court treasures and Flemish tapestries, including pieces after designs by Rubens. The complex was extensive, with orchards, a church, and various service buildings. We highly recommend a visit. Tours are guided only. Because photography is forbidden, we can't show you more from the inside, but it truly is worth going in. The route takes you through cloisters and former cells, and also includes a breathtaking Renaissance staircase, decorated with 17th century paintings, among others by Antonio de Pereda and Claudio Coelho. The walls and vaulted ceiling are completely covered. Alongside religious scenes, you'll spot a painted royal balcony, from which Philip IV and Mariana of Austria appear to be looking down at you with their children. Before we continue towards Grand Via, let's take a short sweet break. Right next to Descalzas Reales, you'll find two great chocolaterias, Chocolateria 1902 and Chocolateria Valor. They're perfect spots to try Spain's famous churros with thick hot chocolate. Churros are crispy sticks made from a simple dough, flour, water, and a pinch of salt, piped through a nozzle straight into hot oil, and served fresh, sometimes sprinkled with sugar. In Spain, they're eaten mostly for breakfast, or merienda, an afternoon snack, and almost always with a cup of rich hot chocolate for dipping. Their popularity comes from how quick and easy they are to make. In Madrid, they're a winter classic, especially on chilly mornings and around the holiday season. Queues in December and January are absolutely normal. After a short break, we head out onto Gran Via, Madrid's Grand Showcase Avenue. Just under a mile of pure urban theater. It runs from Calle de Alcalá at Plaza de Cibeles all the way to Plaza de España. From the first plans to the final buildings, nearly half a century passed, and the project was carried out in 3 stages. Today, Gran Via is a true icon of 20th century architecture, with clear French and American influences. French-style mansard roofs, balconies, and richly decorated facades. And a very American love of height, strong vertical lines, and early skyscrapers, built on steel frames. The street is often called the Spanish Broadway, packed with theaters and musicals, alongside cinemas, department stores, and nightlife that never really goes to sleep. The oldest stretch, built between 1910 and 1917, is lined with beautiful Art Nouveau apartment buildings, a testament to the economic confidence of that era. It is announced by the gilded dome of the Edificio Metropolis, which rises like a theater curtain, introducing the monumental panorama of the avenue. The second section was completed in the 1920s. Here you'll find cinemas and elegant shops. But the real star is the powerful mass of the Edificio Telefónica. Just under 300 feet tall, built between 1926 and 1929 by American architect Louis W. Weeks, together with a Spanish engineering team. It was Madrid's first skyscraper, one of the great symbols of European modernity in that decade. Its design combines American steel frame technology and strong verticals with a distinctly Spanish eye for detail. The austere stone facade is crowned by an almost baroque top, so the building reads both as a machine and as a symbolic city tower. Telefonica quickly became a symbol of progress and communication in Madrid, a lighthouse of the 1920s, visible from afar by day and by night. Even today, its silhouette anchors the perspective of the central stretch of Gran Via. The third section, shaped in the 1930s and 1940s, leads us towards Plaza del Callao, arguably Madrid's most cinematic square. This is the beating heart of entertainment on Gran Via. Neon signs and giant screens, crowds of pedestrians, cafe terraces, and entrances to the theaters and department stores. On the square stands the historic Cine Callao, which still hosts premieres with red carpets, giving the place a truly movie set atmosphere. From Callao, we continue straight ahead towards Plaza de España. We won't stop there just yet. We'll come back to it a little later. For now, we continue straight along Calle de la Princesa. To our next stop, the Palacio de Liria, the private residence of the House of Alba. This remarkable city palace is often called the younger brother of the royal palace. It has nearly 200 rooms and more than 37,000 square feet of floor space. Since the early 19th century, it has been the official residence of one of Spain's oldest noble families and the main home of their priceless art collection and historical archives. The power of the House of Alba grew in the military, political, and social spheres, but they left their strongest mark through their patronage of the arts and their passion for collecting. Today, the palace remains the residence of the 19th Duke of Alba, Carlos Fitzjames Stewart, and the headquarters of the Casa de Alba Foundation. For nearly 500 years, the family has shown extraordinary determination to preserve its collections, whether the cost and effort. Inside Liria, you'll find masterpieces by Goya, Velázquez, El Greco, Rubens, Titian, Murillo, and many others. The splendid library also preserves manuscripts by Christopher Columbus, including a sketch of Hispaniola, the first island he reached on his voyage to the Americas. These documents became part of the Alba collection when one of Columbus' descendants married into the family. Plan on spending at least an hour here. And if Liria completely wins you over, we still have more ahead of us on our walk. Our next stop is one of the most surprising sights on our route. Templo de Debod, an original Egyptian temple from the 2nd century BC, brought to Madrid block by block. It stands on a hillside above the river Manzanares, on the site where less than 100 years earlier, 19th century barracks, the Cuartel de la Montaña, once stood, before being destroyed during the Spanish Civil War. Why did an ancient Egyptian monument end up here? It was a gift from Egypt in gratitude for Spain's help in saving Nubian temples that were threatened with flooding after the construction of the High Dam on the Nile at Aswan, following a UNESCO appeal in the 1960s. The temple, originally dedicated to gods Amonis and Isis, once stood in the town of Debod on the Nile. In Madrid, it was rebuilt with its original east-west orientation and opened to visitors in 1972. Entry to the interior, where you can see the vestibule and 3 chapels with preserved reliefs, is free, but visits are limited to small groups up to 10 people and require an advance online reservation. After visiting inside, be sure to stop at the viewing terrace right next to the temple. From the edge of the hill, you get a sweeping panorama of Royal Madrid. The green sea of Casa de Campo and the distant Guadarrama mountains. It's one of the most beautiful viewpoints in the city, perfect for catching your breath and capturing a few truly spectacular shots. Just a few steps from the temple, as we walk down from the hill, we reach a 19th century palace that once belonged to Enrique de Aguilera y Gamboa, the 17th Marquis of Cerralbo. It's an extraordinary palace, a blend of passion, opulence, and the lifestyle of its former owners. Enrique came from a very wealthy family. His surname appears in documents as early as the 14th century, and in 1533 his ancestors received the marquisate from Emperor Charles I. The family estates were among the largest in the Spanish nobility and guaranteed him a very comfortable life. On top of that, the Marquis increased his fortune through a favorable marriage and successful investments in the stock market and railways, which allowed him to acquire new properties in Madrid, Santa Maria de Huerta, and Monroy. Cerralbo was a politician linked to the Carlist movement, but above all, a traveler, historian, and passionate archaeologist. It was precisely to house the collection he amassed on his journeys and during his research that he had his impressive palace built. The residence was constructed between 1883 and 1893, following his detailed instructions. It was never meant to look like a typical home of a wealthy aristocrat. From the outset, it was designed with a double purpose: an elegant residence for parties and social gatherings, and a private gallery for his ever-growing art collection. The palace is divided into 2 sections, a summer wing and a winter wing, connected by a grand, richly decorated staircase. You won't find many bare walls here. Every corridor and every room is filled with paintings, sculptures, porcelain, clocks, and furniture. More than 50,000 objects are gathered inside, including exquisite furnishing, clocks with hidden mechanism, and even small indoor fountains in the billiard room. Behind the palace there was also a private garden, conceived as a calm extension of the former interiors, a place for walks, social gatherings, and rest among the greenery. The Marquess of Cerralbo was fully aware of the historical importance of his collection, so in his will he left most of his archaeological pieces to the National Archaeological Museum and donated the rest of the collection, together with the palace, to the state. In 1944, the Museo Cerralbo was created, one of the very few museums in Madrid where the original interiors have been preserved. Thanks to this, stepping inside feels less like entering a classical museum and more like visiting still lived-in home of a late 19th century aristocrat. We're getting closer and closer to Plaza de España, But before we reach it, take a moment to look at the remarkable architecture of the church in front of us, Iglesia de Santa Teresa and San Jose. From the outside, it looks almost like a medieval fortress, with battlements, turrets, and a massive fortified entrance gate. But this is not an old castle. It's a relatively new church, built only in the 20th century. Interestingly, this new building sits on very old traditions. The Descalzed Carmelites have been present in Madrid for centuries and have long played an important role in the city's religious life. Here, their monastery and church were conceived as a symbolic fortress of the soul, inspired by Saint Teresa's famous work, The Interior Castle. The style of the building is highly eclectic. It mixes neo-Gothic and Renaissance elements with touches of modernism, clearly visible in the geometric lines of the windows and decorative details. Above the walls rises a huge, colorful dome that, from a distance, calls to mind the churches of the former Byzantine world more than the center of Madrid. It's a neo-Byzantine dome, clad in bands of ceramic tiles in shades of yellow, orange, red, and blue, topped with a crown. If you have a moment, it's well worth stepping inside. The church has a Latin cross floor plan, a very tall central nave, wide arcades, and a bright interior filled with light from stained glass windows. It's one of those places full of surprises, a fortress on the outside and inside a light, airy sanctuary. We're already on the threshold of Plaza de España, but as we stand near the Church of Santa Teresa, let's look over to the left corner of the square, because the facade of this building quite literally stops us in our tracks. This is Casa Gallardo. It's one of the most beautiful examples of Madrid modernism. An elegant early 20th century apartment building designed by Federico Arias Rey. It occupies the entire corner between Plaza de España and Calle Ferraz, which is why its shape so strikingly projects into the square. Behind this fairy tale facade stand two wealthy sisters from the Gallardo family, who at the beginning of the 20th century decided to turn the small palace they had inherited from aristocrats into a modern, luxurious rental apartment house. Take a closer look at the facade. Plant motifs coil across the light-colored walls, sinuous Art Nouveau lines ripple above the windows, and the whole composition is enlivened by bay windows, rounded balconies with intricate cast-iron railings, and whimsical turrets. The corner of the building is crowned by a large tiled dome, where the letter G appears in the decoration, a discreet signature of the first owners. It's a kind of Madrid fairy tale palace, protected as a bien de interés cultural, a heritage site of special significance. And now it's time to take a closer look at Plaza de España. Today it's one of the largest squares in the country, around 9 acres, on the southeastern edge of the Moncloa-Aravaca district. The history of this place goes back to the 16th century, when the Leganitos orchards stretch out here. Charles III planned to build a monastery in this area, but construction was never completed. At the beginning of the 19th century, Joseph Bonaparte turned the building standing here into military barracks, first for the cavalry, then for the artillery. When those early barracks were demolished in the early 20th century, The final design for Plaza de España was approved in 1911. The architectural backdrop of the square is formed by a pair of post-war towers, Edificio España and Torre de Madrid, true landmarks of Madrid's western center. The latest chapter is the renewal of the public space, with more greenery and places to relax, which has once again given the square back to pedestrians and families with children. Water features, wide walkways and play zones have all been added. At the heart of the square stands the monument to Miguel de Cervantes, unveiled in 1929, designed by Rafael Martínez Zapatero and Pedro Muguruza, with sculptures by Lorenzo Callaut Valera, later continued by his son Federico. At the feet of the seated Cervantes are his most famous characters: Don Quixote on Rocinante and Sancho Panza on his donkey, always surrounded by people taking photos. Completing the composition is Dulcinea, that is the beautiful peasant girl Aldonza Lorenzo. In the iconographic program, you'll also find the motif of the 5 continents, bent over the works of Cervantes. And on the other side, near the fountains, an allegory of Spanish literature with a book in her hand. The greenery of the square is accented by olive trees, a discreet nod to the landscape of La Mancha, across which Don Quixote and Sancho once traveled. Why does Cervantes have such a central place here? Because Don Quixote is considered the first modern novel and a cornerstone of world literature. And the Spanish language itself is sometimes called the lengua de Cervantes. His work holds this place together. From the monument to the surrounding buildings, you can read Spain's path from the Golden Age to the era of skyscrapers. At the end of today's route, we stop in front of the Senate Palace, the seat of the upper house of the Spanish Parliament, the Cortes Generales. The lower house is the Congress of Deputies, whose impressive building we showed you during our second walk. The palace stands on Plaza de la Marina Española, Spanish Navy Square, and occupies a building that dates back to the 16th century. In earlier times, it housed one of the most important institutions of Madrid, the Colegio de Encarnación de Madrid, the seminary of the Order of Saint Augustine. In the seminary church, there was a famous altarpiece for Doña María de Aragon, painted by El Greco, probably made up of 7 canvases. Founded in honor of the order's benefactress, María de Aragon, a lady-in-waiting to Anne of Austria, wife of Philip II. Today, 5 of these works can be seen in the Prado Museum, 1 in the National Museum of Art in Bucharest, and 1 is considered lost. Around 1808, by decree of Joseph Bonaparte, the seminary was closed, part of a broader policy of restricting religious orders in Spain. From 1814 onwards, with breaks in the following years, the building served as a meeting place for the Cortes of Cadiz, the country's first official parliament. It was then that the priceless altarpiece was dismantled. In 1835, after the Royal Statute of 1834, the Cortes Generales were established as a bicameral parliament. The building became the official seat of political institutions, and the former church was converted into the plenary chamber. In 1845, the architect Álvarez Buquel gave the facade its current neoclassical appearance. And at the end of the 20th century, a contemporary wing was added, with a new elevation facing Calle Bailén. On the square in front of the Senate stands a monument to Antonio Cánovas del Castillo, multiple-time Prime Minister and co-author of the 1876 Constitution. The palace itself can be visited free of charge with a guided tour in Spanish, outside of sitting days and with prior online reservation. And if you don't manage to go inside, you'll also find a link on our website to a virtual version of the tour. From Senate Square you can either head to the nearby Real Monasterio de la Encarnación, which we told you more about during our first walk, or stop for a moment's rest from the Madrid's heat in the Sabatini Gardens. These elegant neoclassical gardens, laid out on the site of the palace's former royal stables, delight with perfectly trimmed hedges arranged in geometric patterns, symmetrical paths, fountains and statues of Spanish kings, which were originally meant to adorn the balustrade of the royal palace. Thanks to their terrace layout slightly below street level, the Sabatini Gardens are surprisingly quiet and offer one of the most pleasant viewpoints over the northern facade of the Palacio Real and the western part of the city. It's the perfect place to sit on a bench in the shade, catch your breath after a full day of sightseeing, and simply enjoy the view. Our plan for today ends right here in the Sabatini Gardens, a green, peaceful frame for Royal Madrid that lets you finish the walk in truly royal style. We hope you've enjoyed it and that along the way you've gathered inspiration and information that will be useful in your own explorations. Madrid is a lively, welcoming city full of contrasts, and that's exactly why it attracts so many people. If you'd like more walks like this, subscribe and turn on notifications. Let us know in the comments which place surprised you the most. This is not the end. We're staying in Madrid, and very soon we'll show you more treasures and curiosities of Spain's capital. See you on the next walk.